I'ma keep it a bean. Stick to the script, every scene. This from last year, but they clean. Say to say, I'ma take something else, but it's a winning team. Charlie Sheen, fam gang, the regime. I'm from Piney Green.
What's good, it's Shellitronnn here, but you can call me Shells, and I'm back at it again with a brand new video, and I'm gonna keep it a Bowberry biscuit. I'm gonna say something here that a lot of Panthers fans might not like, but I gotta keep it real. Christian McCaffrey will not win the MVP award for the 2019 NFL season. Now I'm going to give this video a quick pause right now. I'm going to stop for 5 seconds. I'm going to give you time right now before I explain myself to go ahead and type that comment. And I see it right now. Go ahead and do it. I'll wait. Alright, time's up. Let me explain why Christian McCaffrey will not win the MVP award this season. And I'll start by saying this. If the season were to end right now, Christian McCaffrey would win. There's no other player in the league who's had a bigger impact on their team. No one's doing more with less on their team. And no one's doing more as single-handedly as Christian McCaffrey is. You can talk about quarterbacks, but at the end of the day, you have to depend on very talented receivers and maybe other running backs and tight ends to do their job well in order for you to get your numbers. Christian McCaffrey is doing this with a backup quarterback and sort of a patchwork offensive line. We're on our third string left tackle. Our starting right guard is out, and the guy replacing him is a right tackle who got injured. Didn't play left tackle this year. Didn't play well there, and now he's at right guard. The starting center is new to the team this year, so Christian McCaffrey has a lot of things he has to work with, whereas other MVP candidates so far this year have a little bit more to work with, although one has a pretty bad O-line, and we'll get to Russell Wilson here in a second. But before I get to Christian McCaffrey, let's talk about the other two MVP candidates, or the guys who are leading the race right now along with C-Mac. Russell Wilson, who I just mentioned, and Patrick Mahomes. Let's start with Mahomes real quick. Now, Patrick Mahomes has had a pretty good season so far, completing 66% of his passes, 11 touchdowns, no interceptions, averaging 9.4 yards per attempt, and averaging 14.3 yards per completion, a 114.7 passer rating. All that looks very impressive. You can't hate on that. 1,800 yards through the air so far. But if we're being real, most of that impressive stuff came along in the first 3 weeks. Over the past 2 weeks against Detroit, the man completed only 57% of his passes, did not score a single touchdown through the air. And then just this past week versus the Colts, he only scored 13 points, only completed 56% of his passes, and he only had 1 touchdown through the air. Those were not impressive games. And in a league where the season's so short and there's only 16 games in a season, it's a what have you done for me lately kind of league. And you really can't afford to have too many bad games, let alone 2 straight bad games. And on top of that, it's the 2 most recent games you played. That plays a factor when people think about MVP votes. So Patrick Mahomes is impressive, and he probably will bounce back. But if the season were to end right now, he would not win the MVP award, even though we know he is probably the best quarterback in the league right now from a talent and potential perspective. But let's talk about a guy who's been in the league for a few more years than Patrick Mahomes, and a guy who's doing a little bit more with a little bit less, Russell Wilson. Now, this guy so far has been completing 73% of his passes, 12 touchdowns, no interceptions. That's 1 more touchdown than Patrick Mahomes, 9 yards per attempt, 12 yards per completion, and has a passer rating of 126.3. Russell Wilson has been doing a whole lot this season. A lot. Not too many yards on the ground, but that's not really what we're looking for from Russell Wilson that much. He's not a running quarterback. He's a scrambling quarterback, and part of that's because his O-line historically has been garbage. It's been garbage. But he's been consistently performing this whole season, and unlike Patrick Mahomes, these past 2 weeks have been very impressive. 2 weeks ago versus the Cardinals, he only threw 1 passing touchdown, but the run game has been really good for him, so you have to take that into account as well. But this past week versus the Rams, 4 touchdown passes. He carved that defense up, and there's no other way of putting it. This Rams defense, it was supposed to be really good, but we've seen some teams score on them. We've seen a lot of teams score on them. Almost every team is scoring on this Rams defense. And Russell Wilson completing 74% of his passes against them, getting those 4 touchdowns, and not even cracking 300 yards to do it is still very impressive. But like I said, neither of these 2 guys, who've had really impressive seasons so far, have had the impact that Christian McCaffrey has this season so far. 105 rush attempts, 587 rush yards, 6 touchdowns, averaging 5.6 yards a carry. But don't stop me yet because I'm not done. 31 receptions for 279 yards and an additional touchdown. This man is killing the game so far through 5 games. 866 yards from scrimmage. You really can't. This is unfathomable. Unfathomable. What Christian McCaffrey has been doing this season. And you're wondering now, wait. But you just said he's having the best season so far, even better than Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes. He's doing things you haven't seen before. What he's done these first 5 games of the season is second only to what Jim Brown did in 1963. And he's beating 2 pairs of other records set by Jim Brown and O.J. Simpson before him. So why won't CMC win MVP? Because his usage rate is going to go down. That might sound crazy if you're not watching the games, but for y'all who watch the games, what happened at the very end of that game against the Jacksonville Jaguars? We saw Christian McCaffrey, for the first time in his career, look human. He got tired. The man got out of the game. He was cramping a little bit. We saw him slipping down one of those Gatorade refuel things, those gelatin pack things, getting some Gatorade on the side of the field, getting some Gatorade on the sideline. And what else happened? Getting some Gatorade, but even more importantly, getting some rest. Even bigger than that, not just getting rest. You can get rest during a timeout. He was getting rest and taking snaps off. Before this game, this past game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, Christian McCaffrey had only been out of the game for 5 snaps. Through 4 games, he only missed 5 snaps. But in this past game against the Jags, we saw the backup, Reggie Bonifant, do very, very well. 5 rushes, 80 yards, got a touchdown. And people around the league don't know this, but Reggie's really good catching the ball at the backfield as well. And he's pretty fast too. I wouldn't be surprised if he could do some routes out of the slot position as well. We might see this coaching staff dial back a little bit on Christian McCaffrey, make sure he can play the whole 16-game season, and say, hold up, we don't need to ground and pound this man, Christian McCaffrey, every single down because the team has some very valuable backups there who can hold the fort down while Christian McCaffrey gets some rest, while Christian McCaffrey can, let his body heal a little bit. I'm not saying run a 50-50 kind of thing. I'm not saying go back to J. Stu and D. Will back in those days. But what I am saying is C-Mac will probably see his snap share come down from 99% to maybe something like 85. Maybe somewhere between 80 and 85% with Reggie Bonifant playing well. And maybe we'll see some Jordan Scarlett later on in the season. But Christian McCaffrey will get less snaps as the year goes on. This coaching staff, led by Ron Rivera, and the offense led by Norv Turner, has to realize that Christian McCaffrey is the team's best chance of winning. And the regular season goes through December, but the postseason goes through February. And it's going to be very, very hard to get production out of a running back you overused early on in the season, especially when you realize that you have valuable guys behind him in the depth chart. I have no doubt in my mind that Christian McCaffrey will have a huge season this year. But I do not believe he'll win the MVP this season because I think the team is going to try to go away from him a little bit and try to preserve him a little bit for later on in the season to make a playoff push because Cam is going to come back this season. It may not be in this upcoming week. It may not be the week following our bye. But I think by week 10, Cam will come back. And having a healthy Cam and having a Christian McCaffrey who's not getting 30, 35 carries per game or 35 touches per game is going to be untouchable. Because we know when Cam is 100%, he is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, full stop. Alright? And that's just plain facts. That's a Fendi fact. Christian McCaffrey is obviously the best running back in the league, and he's making a case for being the best player in the league, regardless of position, regardless of what side of the ball that you play on. Maybe even better than Aaron Donald was last year. But I don't believe this level of production is going to continue for much longer. That's all I got for you, though. What are your thoughts? Will Christian McCaffrey win the MVP award? Will he get less snaps as the year goes on? Or will we still use him about the same amount we've been using him so far, around 98, 95% of all snaps on offense? And does that even matter? Do you think that Christian McCaffrey can still win MVP getting 85 to 90% of the snaps? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. And you already know to do with that like button.
Cheers to you, appreciate the chance. Been told y'all I been the man. Been told y'all I had the gift. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Real ones gonna recommend. Count this as another win.